Hello and welcome to another episode of 1000 Actually Fun Books, where we are looking for the best of fun escapist books. So we are reading books of every genre, looking for the best thereof. We just read The Dutch House by Ann Patchett, and normally I hold it up, but I returned the book to the library this morning, which was rather short-sighted of me. So I can't hold it up, but you had the picture there at the beginning. So let's talk about the plot first. This is a book, it kind of revolves around the trauma of abandonment. So this is a general fiction, a literary book, the kind of book that you will find in book clubs and get lots of oohs and ahs, but not generally speaking my kind of book. So our plot revolves around the main character, the narrator, is Danny, and his sister, and it's mostly their relationship. So Danny's mom abandoned them when he was very young enough to not really remember her well or remember the circumstances or anything like that. And this is set in a time period where they have help in the house. So, maybe not quite Depression era, but like the 50s or something like that. Anyway, so one of his nannies kind of is fired for reasons I won't get into. Then his dad remarries, and both Danny and his sister Mauve are like, why did he marry her? She didn't seem like, it didn't seem like they loved each other. It was just more like she nagged him into marrying him, or she just wouldn't leave him alone or something. So the kids were kind of like, why? And this is not a good situation necessarily. Not outright abusive, but she is not a loving stepmother either. Anyway, goes on a little bit longer, and then Danny's dad dies. Then the stepmom essentially kicks him out of the house, even though he's, 16 or something. So again, you've got this repetitive abandonment. The only one he can rely on, the only one that's stable in his life, is his sister Mauve, who happens to be several years older, like 5 years older or something, and she already had a job, kind of a stable situation, so she takes him in. And then the rest of the story is kind of his life, what happens after that. So the first third of the book is everything that I've told you. The second third of the book is basically him outside of the Dutch house. That was the name of their home that they lived in up until he was kicked out and the stepmom got everything. And then the last third of the book is kind of their mom shows back up in the picture and how that all resolves. So the things that I like about this book. One is it was well written. It really was. It's not my style, but for the style that it was well done. They've got some recurring themes, for example, that it's kind of cyclical, or things come up at the beginning and then reoccur thematically later. For example, Mauve, their mother, abandons them and she gets sick. And it seems to be like a stress thing. She gets very sick in the hospital kind of thing. And then mom comes back, and then mom leaves again. And she perceives it as kind of an abandonment, another abandonment, although technically that's not quite what happened, but you can see it as another abandonment. And she dies. So it's that kind of, that abandonment, it hurt her so much she got sick, and then it hurt her so much that she died. And you just kind of can see that cyclical case going on. Same thing with other things. So for example, Danny turns out to be a lot like his father in a lot of ways, and you can see that subtly come up over and over again. It isn't like somebody comes out and says, oh wow, you're so like your dad, or anybody points it out and says, your dad did that, or something like that. But the way his dad is described in the beginning turns out to be what Danny is like in the end. And not, however, in abandoning kids, but in other ways. His personality, his way he shows how he cares to his wife, things like that. So it is well done. I read it. I didn't hear the narrator, but the narration apparently is really good because it's done by, what is that actor who, really famous, Tom Hanks. It's narrated by Tom Hanks. And apparently he did a really good job because I had several people tell me, oh, it's such a fantastic listen. So if you like listening audio, that would probably be the way to do it. Okay, so that is pretty much all I really liked. I will say the author did a good job with the house. So it's called the Dutch house because a lot of the story kind of centers around this house. The first third, they're living in the house. The second third, they have been abandoned, and they are kicked out of the house, but it still keeps coming up, and it keeps coming up. And then the last third, they kind of return to the house at the very end. And so it's a very central character. But interestingly enough, it doesn't feel like a malevolent character. It's a big, gaudy, it's unknown, mysterious kind of looming presence, but it doesn't feel malevolent. It's not a cruel house. It doesn't have a scary overtone. So the author did a great job with that too. The house feels like a major part of the story, but not a bad person, for lack of a better term. And I will say that this story, despite the fact that trauma is a huge part in that, it does not feel horrible. You've got kind of that evil stepmother going on, like a Cinderella type of situation, but it doesn't feel like you're sitting there going, oh my goodness, I have to read through abuse. That's not what happens. Instead, it's more just like, like, what is wrong with you kind of situation, and oh, well, I guess we have to deal with this now and move on with your life. So I liked those things too. Okay, things I disliked. The main characters of Mauve and Danny, especially Danny, are not particularly likable, I didn't find. So Mauve is kind of consumed with bitterness and revenge. And Danny is self-centered and apathetic. So as an example, they keep returning to the Dutch house in that middle section. So Mauve and Daddy get together during like a college school break, and they go and park in front of the Dutch house and reminisce about something about it, the evil stepmom or something about the house. And it's a bitterness that Mauve has that she can't let go of what happened. And a lot of the decision making that they make in that middle part of the book is all about revenge and bitterness. That's really what it is. Danny goes along with it. Mauve is really the instigator of this. So I wouldn't actually say Danny is bitter or vengeful. He just kind of apathetically goes along with Mauve's plan. And, again, it's a background why they're doing what they're doing, but it's not actually the forefront focus. So revenge is not really the main focus of that part of the story. Instead, it's just their life. It's just their daily life. Danny's schooling and how he's getting along and how he's managing and things like that. It's just what's happening in his life. But why he's in the circumstances he is all rooted in that bitterness. So I didn't really like that. Danny, to give an example, I'll give you two examples of his self-centeredness. One is that he meets a girl and they kind of get together and they're sleeping together, and she pretty much assumes that they're going to get married. Again, this is like in the 50s, so it's not really appropriate that they're sleeping together, not socially acceptable, but it's written in the modern day, so obviously that's the way it's going to be. But she assumes they're going to get married. And he's kind of like, well, I hadn't really thought about it. I mean, you give me everything I need. Why should we get married? I mean, his attitude is, we see each other 3 days a week on the weekend. You do my laundry. You cook for me while I'm there. You sleep in my bed at night. And really, that's all I want. I don't want you around the rest of my life or the rest of the time of the week. That's all I need. And so they sort of break up, and he's kind of okay with that. He's like, whatever. And then they find each other again, and she slots back into his life the same way she did before. Fills his bed and does the chores. And this is a quote from the book on page 206. I picked the woman who had committed herself to smoothing my path and supporting my life. That's why he married her. It's not because he cared about her. It's not because he wanted to spend time with her. It's not because he loved her or wanted to have anything to do with her life. It was because she was basically a really good servant. She gave him the things that he wanted, and he's kind of like, that's good enough. Sure, we'll get married. So they get married. And to me, everything about this relationship is self-centered. It's all about Danny. He doesn't care about her, really. It's interesting because it looks like he really cares about his sister. And he does. He does care about her. There's a lot of things he does focused around her. But it doesn't seem like it's a healthy relationship necessarily, more like a codependent relationship. But even so, later on, so Mom shows back up in the picture. And Danny starts out pretty indifferent about this. You know, he doesn't remember her much, he doesn't really love her, he doesn't care about her. He's also not terribly bitter about it. But then Mauve embraces her, embraces the woman that abandoned them. And Danny's like, what's up with that? And it takes up too much of Mauve's attention and time. Instead of focusing on Danny, Mauve is now focused on Mom. And Danny totally resents this. I mean, now we see bitterness spring up and coldness towards Mom because it's taking Mauve's attention. And again, very self-centered, very self-centered. So he's either apathetic and going along with what somebody else wants, whether it's marrying or whether it's going to the college he goes to or whatever, or he is self-centered. I mean, those are the two things that strike me about Danny. So Mauve, on the other hand, so because Danny is the narrator, I'll give you, I guess, one more thing. Mauve is the other main character. It's really, how their relationship is. But I don't feel like you get a full picture of who Mauve is because it's all about Danny. So Mauve may be in a relationship, maybe not, and you don't really know. And Danny doesn't even bother asking because he doesn't care. It's all about him. And because of that, Mauve does not feel as fleshed out as a character as Danny does. Because the things that Danny doesn't care about or isn't present for, you don't hear about. And so lots of things may be happening with Mauve, but you don't know about it because Danny doesn't care. And so, anyway, I didn't like our characters. Let's just put it that way. And it's all about the characters. This is a character-driven story, not a plot-driven story. And in fact, plot, it's really hard. I was halfway through the book and I'm like, what is this even about? What is the point of this book? It's just about their life. It felt to me like if I sat down for a 7-hour flight and the person sits down next to me and just starts chattering on and on and on about their life. And I'm looking at this person going, why do you think I care about this? Why are you telling me this? And that's kind of how I felt through about halfway through the book. That was how I was feeling. Like, why is this author telling me this? Why do you think I care about this? Because I didn't care about the characters enough to want to know how it ended. Now, I did read all the way through the book, and I will say that the last half probably was better than the first half, but I still didn't love, because I read a book, I want to either love the characters or want to be with the characters, or I want to be in the situation. I want to be part of the situation. And neither of those are part of what this book is. Now, I was around a bunch of other people who had read it, and they talked about it, and they were just raving about it. They're like, this is a wonderful book. And I asked them, I was like, why do you like this? I mean, because I don't like the characters, I don't like the situation. What is it about it that you like? And some people said, well, they could really relate to it, which I couldn't. And other people said that they just really like that kind of book that has that, their life story that is pointless, that is fictional. I mean, if this was historical fiction where it was historical details or the people were real, I would have liked it a lot more. As it was, I didn't. There is no humor in the book. I didn't particularly like that. I like books with a lighthearted tone that occasionally interject humorous moments, and this doesn't have that. So overall, I did not really enjoy the book, but I do think it was well done. For somebody who likes this style, this genre, it would probably be a fantastic book. It just wasn't for me. So my overall pick, my overall rating is just going to be okay. Just because it's not the escapist fun that I'm looking for. But for people who like this kind of book, you'd probably love it. Okay, so part 2. I am going to do a science fiction from Isaac Asimov, Fantastic Voyage. So when I picked this book, I was thinking that this was originally an Isaac Asimov, because he's a really famous sci-fi author. One of his books, that he came up with a story. It turns out it's based on a screenplay by Harry Kleiner. So he just took somebody else's work and made it a novel. So the movie kind of came first. So I'm not sure that this is exactly what I was looking for. I might have to pick another book by him at some point in the future to really get a feel for that author. But for right now, I'm going to try it anyway. Fantastic Voyage looks like a really quick read, kind of pulpy sci-fi. So anyway, I hope you join me next time. Thank you for watching.